saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Powerful word. Now I'm going to just educate you very quickly. On the piano, you have white keys and black keys. And that song can actually be played on all the black keys. Now, for those of you who can't see this black, we have 2 black keys and 3 black keys. So how much is that? 2 plus 3, 5. And 5 is actually linked to the number of grace. So when he wrote that song, he was talking about amazing grace of God, right? The grace, the unmerited favor of God, his love, and he can be played on all those notes. So it's no coincidence that it has those notes on the piano. Now I found that this grace is timeless, and this grace is also styleless. So one of these days, I like to give stories for those of you who know me, right? So one of these days I was just meditating and thinking about that grace. I'm like, God, your grace is timeless, right? Because we don't even deserve it. It's timeless. And in music, it's actually styleless. So his grace is timeless, and in music, his grace is styleless. So I was listening, or I was looking at some of the earlier music. So in the earlier music, I wasn't around in those medieval times and nights and so forth, but they would do a lot of these hums. I don't know what they're doing, but if I was in that style, I'm like, okay, that's grace is timeless, and grace is also styleless. So if I did it in that style, it'd be like this. Sounds like a bagpipe almost, doesn't it? Without an instrument. But if I went to another time, I was hearing another song. Now, I don't necessarily agree with all the song, but I heard, and those of you heard this last time, it went like this, right? Now I heard, okay, grace is styleless. That's what I heard. I said, because grace is styleless, right? Grace is timeless and styleless. So those of you, I was grown in the 1970s. Well, those of you that grew up in the 60s, I would hear this stuff in the 60s, at least I was told, or I did hear it. And styles like, right? Is that 60s? Okay, so if I grew up in the 60s, I would hear this. See, right? Now, if we had, let's say, grew up in Bach and Mozart times and so forth, so they would have maybe songs like. So I'm like, grace is timeless, grace is styleless. So if I was in that era, I'd do that song like this. Or now, some of my background very quickly is I'm Canadian, proud to be Canadian, but I'm also proud to have a Jamaican background. So if I was in Jamaica, they would probably do it like this. Feel that, eh? His grace is timeless and his grace is styleless. So if I grew up in another era, I think maybe around the 70s now, you'd hear a song that would sound like this. Now, I said, no, that style is timeless. It's talking about my God. I'm talking about my God. or have a, all right, so I would have a, maybe another era, you'd hear something like, now, but I would hear it like this. All right, and then some of you youth, maybe you guys have heard a song that sounds like this. I think I heard the piano, something like. So I say, grace is timeless, grace is styleless. One more. So this one, I just say, I used to like a particular piano player. He's a Canadian. His name was Oscar Peterson. Now, he'll play songs that sound like this. Amazing grace is timeless and it's styleless. Amen.